Shame you won't be around to enjoy what comes next.
Coming into 2026, Overwatch has made a lot of big changes that have ushered in a renaissance for the game. With the launch of the new Season 1, there was an explosion of new content and additions that have solidified a new era of Overwatch. The biggest part of this was the 5 new heroes released together, each of them bringing something new and interesting to the table. Among them, of course, is Jetpack Cat, a character that has actually been in the works, or at least in concept, since the very early days of Overwatch. This addition was as unexpected as it was delightful, as there has been some contention in the Overwatch community, even just within the last year, with the developers saying that they wouldn't release any more oddball characters and instead focus on more aspirational, conventionally attractive humans, to the dismay of a lot of fans, including myself. This honestly was a massive disappointment, as Overwatch was always known not just for having goofy characters, but for also having characters of all shapes, sizes, and walks of life. With this in mind, we were all probably expecting them to continue just releasing pretty girls, muscle mommies, and different flavors of twink. And to be fair, that is the vast majority of what has been getting released recently, but it is still cool that they actually released this hero after so many years. It is an absolutely chaotic and adorable addition to the cast. And so in this video, I want to pick apart the design of the character, doing a bit of a deep dive into both who the character is in the lore, as well as the personality and looks, and the gameplay and how it fits into the game. Also, I am thinking of making a series out of analyzing Overwatch characters like this, so if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave down in the comments below any requests for another hero that you'd like me to do a deep dive into. And without any further ado, it's time for Blast Off! First and foremost, let's talk about the lore of Jetpack Cat, because unfortunately there isn't a ton to say, at least at this point in time. The story is that at some point, a random stray cat appeared mysteriously in Watchpoint Gibraltar, and Brigitte, being the crazy cat person that she is, decided to take her in and immediately equipped her with a jetpack of her own. I mean, who hasn't been blessed by the cat distribution system and immediately provided that fur baby with military equipment, right? To be fair, it wasn't really a spur-of-the-moment decision, at least not entirely. Ever since she was a kid, she had this idea, but she hadn't found the right cat for it until she rescued this one and saw something special in her. And that's pretty much the story so far. Obviously, the character just released, and there's plenty of time for the character to be developed further. The actual in-game name of this hero is just Jetpack Cat, which honestly I do kinda have an issue with because it doesn't even really feel like a name. It feels more like a description of what it is. It is a cat in a jetpack. Something like, I don't know, Agent Pawprint would have been a lot more interesting and have given this a lot more character. A bit more interesting is the cat's actual name, Fika. Fika is the Swedish concept of a sort of coffee break, though it goes deeper than that, as it has more of a social aspect of taking some time to relax with the people around you and enjoy some coffee and some pastries. And since Brigitte thought the cat looks like a cinnamon roll, she went with Fika. This is a really cute name that totally shows Brig's culture and love of food, so it definitely works as a name that she would give to a cat, but it does contribute to this feeling I can't shake that ultimately what we know about Jetpack Cat tells us a lot more about who Brig is as a character rather than what it does actually say about Jetpack Cat herself. I mean, there's obviously the fact that this was a big engineering project for Brig, and it shows that she's clearly following in her father's footsteps. She has already shown some engineering prowess through the equipment she uses and how she's been shown to help Torb, but this is the first huge solo project of hers that is comparable in scale to a Torbjorn project. In a way though, it does put her ethics into question, because why would you just put a random cat in military equipment and set it out into combat? I feel like that's very irresponsible as a cat parent. For all she knows, this is just a normal cat. She does say that she sees something special in Fika, and to be honest, I do as well. I think there's something a bit deeper to this cat, because it clearly isn't just a normal cat. I mean, how many cats can you think of that can operate machinery like this? I have a bit of a headcanon as to what Fika's true nature is, but we'll get into that a bit later in the video. Now, in terms of personality, we also don't have a ton to go off of. Not necessarily because of lack of in-game interactions, but simply because the cat doesn't speak. Unlike Winston and Hammond before her, she is the first animal character to not speak in some form, instead being a lot more similar to Bastion. And even then, Bastion is understood by other Omnics who can have more informed responses to him. With Fika, she really is just a cat. I do find this to be a bit of a double-edged sword, because while on the one hand, having a cat meowing all the time is adorable, and I do struggle to come up with ideas on how she could talk in a way that doesn't feel like just a copy-paste of Hammond or Winston, it does make it a lot more difficult to portray and by extension understand her personality. Throughout her interactions, we see her mainly just taking a reactive role, with only one of her interactions being initiated by her. And her reactions, well, they tell us she's a cat. She hisses when someone threatens or teases her, acts happy when offered treats, or just generally responds when acknowledged. The only interaction where we really get anything close to unique is when she hisses at Wooyong unprovoked, but even this could just be because most cats would hiss at someone with a ton of water. As a cat person that has had several cats throughout my life, there is definitely a lot that they could be doing to give Fika more of a personality as a cat. There are grumpy cats, cats with a single brain cell, sweet cats, cuddly cats, chaotic cats, and so many more ways that they could have chosen to portray this one cat. So I hope with time they give her something more than just being a cat. When it comes to her looks, there is really not a lot to talk about either. The cat has this harness and cute helmet with goggles, and she is on this jetpack/drone contraption. Honestly, the only thing about this design that stops it from having a total lack of whimsy is the paw-shaped cannons, but it really isn't a ton. I feel like there's a whole world of potential ways where they could take the concept of a cat on a jetpack, and ultimately, I feel like they really didn't take it much of anywhere. What is especially weird to me is that if you look at the original concept art for the character from way back when, well, it actually was a character, and a pretty cool one at that. There's some awesome design elements like the jacket, the glasses, and the hair, and it oozes personality through its expressions. Honestly, this character design was gold, and it makes me wonder why Blizzard threw all of it away. I do have two theories here. The first one is that this original design does give me a lot of vibes of Rocket Raccoon, and I could see Blizzard wanting to avoid something that would be so heavily comparable to something in Marvel Rivals. I mean, even in its current state, I keep seeing people comparing the cat to Jeff, despite them being nothing really alike. So I can imagine that there was some influence in wanting to move away from that design. Of course, just because you're moving away from a certain style or personality, it doesn't mean that you just have to go into absolute nothing, but that does bring me into the other theory that I have about this. I have to wonder if this is some sort of compromise for the whole oddball situation. Make a character that's just outrageous in concept, but strip it completely of anything else beyond that so as to not ruffle too many feathers. Unfortunately, in the pursuit of giving us nothing to hate, they also didn't really give us anything to love. It feels like, as far as a character goes, they're relying on Jetpack Cat's gameplay and the fact that it is a cute cat to make us love it. And to be fair, I hate to say this, but I do feel like it's working. I mean, I am an absolute cat person, and I've been having a blast terrorizing my enemies while meowing the entire time. Yes, the design is a bit simplistic, but maybe that isn't such a bad thing. Not every character needs to be a Sigma to have their value in their place, and even though I would have liked something a little bit more interesting, what we have is fun and cute, and I think at the end of the day, that is really all that a cat in a jetpack needs to be. Ultimately, the cat just got out of the bag, and she still has her whole existence ahead of her for them to continue developing her personality more. And given that Overwatch is clearly getting into a more story-driven era, I am very excited to see what they come up with for her. Now, while her character may be a bit simple, when it comes to gameplay, this has got to be one of the single most interesting additions that have ever been added to the game. Fair disclaimer before we get into this next section, I am not good at this game. I am kind of hard stuck gold, and I'm at peace with that. Not everybody is going to be great at this game, and I am certainly not that. I am not here to give anybody advice on how to play, but I am here to break down the design of the character, and that includes the experience of playing it. And playing Jetpack Cat is indeed such a fun experience, and her addition has made a huge splash in the community. She brings something so unique and interesting to the game, being the first and only permanently flying hero, and being able to share its crazy mobility with her teammates through her tether. Lifeline, or should I say Lifeline, is more commonly known as a tether, which, of course, is the biggest talking point when people discuss this hero, as it is a utility that she brings to the team, and there are some wild things that can be done with it. At its simplest form, it allows her to taxi a teammate, helping low mobility heroes come back from spawn or switch positioning a lot faster. But of course, the major detail about the tether is that it doesn't have a duration limit to it, meaning that if you and the person being carried wanted it, they can be tethered the entire match, flying and raining damage. The possibilities of this immediately horrified the player base, but as intimidating as it looks and as insane as it sounds, I personally have found that it is not really that effective, or at least not super consistent. It could be because I am not in a particularly high elo, but I personally have never seen the strategy being as game-breaking as it might seem. Being so high and by extension far from everything you could shoot at, it will impact aim, just like the sheer swing and movement from the tether itself. Not to mention that now you're a huge target that is not being covered by anything, and all of this while the cat player basically gives up using almost all of their kin and value. Where the tether really shines is when supporting dives and ultimates. Whether it is a tank or diver suddenly and quietly airdropping into your backline, a diva bomb chasing you into what you thought was safe, or hearing "it's high noon," only to look up and see a cat and a cowboy seconds away from murdering you. When used sparingly and intentionally, the tether can make some really revolutionary plays. Beyond the tether though, every part of this hero's kit is fantastic. Her primary fire, the biotic projectiles, are really good mid-range projectiles that heal allies and damage enemies, making Jetpack Cat the third character along with Anna and Juno that can both heal and damage with their main weapon. Then we have the Purr, an ability that creates a healing area around her and that pushes back enemies. This is a very strong ability that outputs very reliable healing numbers that can sustain your team even through things like Zarya's ult. Even though this kit is really great on its own, the thing that makes it all come together is the fact that it is on the Jetpack Cat. Jetpack Cat has the best mobility in the game through her frenetic flight. She can quickly zoom all over the place, being able to support a team even if it is spread out and on different altitudes. Of course, the zoomies are not just there to help her team, but she can use them to pounce on her enemies. Jetpack Cat has some insane diving capabilities. The speed at which she can zoom around and close the gap between her and any target is staggering, and she can do so while pretty much entirely quiet. Her cannons pack quite a punch, and her Purr does great self-healing that keeps her alive through duels. She can be an absolute menace when it comes to diving, and that is even before looking at her perks. I won't be getting too much into them because these do tend to be swapped with updates, and at the time of making this video, her two main perks have already gotten nerfed, and I wouldn't be surprised if they got removed altogether in Season 2. But I think they are worth talking about in order to get a full snapshot of how the character plays right now in Season 1. The more popular of her minor perks is Claws Out, which empowers her quick melee for 40 extra wound damage while slowing her target, and her more popular major perk is Territorial, which removes Purr's knockback and instead makes it do damage to enemies within its area of effect. These two make her insane dives all that more powerful, and I think it is part of what has pushed her over the edge into being one of the most banned characters at the moment. Last but not least in her kit is her ultimate, Catnapper. where she dives into the ground, knocking enemies over and tethering to the nearest one, at which point you have a short time to move them wherever you want. Depending on the map, this means she can get a free pick by dropping the enemy off the side of the map, but on maps where this isn't readily available, she can still bring the catnapped enemy into your own team so that they can jump them for the pick. While a strong ult, it is not as infallible as it may sound. You can miss the landing and waste it altogether, but even when you do land it, there's a lot of counterplay options. Any crowd control ability will immediately break the tether, not to mention that to do this, the cat has to basically relinquish all cover, so it is relatively easy to just eliminate her out of it. I think her ult is a pretty good microcosm of how good Fika is in general. She is a really strong hero, but she can be a little bit map dependent. She shines the most when she is able to fly, and that means that maps with big open skies are best for her. That is not to say that she's awful without them, but they are what gives her that extra oomph into being one of, if not the best support in the game. As for the experience of playing Jetpack Cat, I will say that it is some of that classic, fast-paced Overwatch fun. The absolute speed of her movement just feels so good to play with. Then there's a social aspect that she brings to the table where you have to consciously cooperate with your teammates to get the most out of her tether, and it can be really satisfying pulling things off together. One thing I do kind of find funny about my experience playing her, and I don't know if this is just something that only happens to me, or if it is a more universal experience, but I find that the cat mirror is one of the most intense rivalries that happens in the game. Whereas two enemy Mercies will tend to be friendly with each other, I feel like two Jetpack Cats will constantly be territorial and at each other's throats all game. I don't know if it is the fact that the kid is just made for people to duel, or if it's just the animalistic instincts taking over, but us cat mains can get intense. Altogether, Jetpack Cat is a fantastic addition to Overwatch, and I am so excited that she's here. Looking into the future, I really hope that the player base comes around on banning her all the time in competitive, because while I recognize that she is certainly out there, she is genuinely not as disruptive as people make her seem. Like, she is nowhere near as annoying as Vendetta, for example. Inevitably, there will be nerfs and adjustments, some have already hit, but I just hope that they don't alter the character too much, or that she goes through a rework hell like Sombra, but rather that they tighten her numbers while keeping her as fun to play as she is. Also, some perks that help add variety to playstyles with her would also be nice, so that cat players are not always built to dive, but that she could also have a more viable traditional support option. When it comes to cosmetics, I fully expect Jetpack Cat to end up joining the likes of Mercy and Kiriko in the unholy pantheon of characters that get all of these skins. And I'm actually kind of here for it this time. What can I say? I just love cats. And I am really looking forward to having all sorts of different cats represented. Also, if and when they bring back the Persona 5 collab, I would love a Morgana skin. Another thought that I had that would be super fun for cosmetics is that her voice lines could take the approach of those pet button talking systems that are always popping up online. It would be very fun for her to just have random words that she can spam, and I feel like it would totally be character appropriate. She's already proficient with using buttons, and I could absolutely see Brigitte trying to teach Fika something like this. Also, I would love to have a spammable voice line where I can just be like, mad, 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 the entire match. Lastly, as a character, I do really hope that they explore her story and origins and that she gets a lot more development in time. I love that they say that she mysteriously appeared at Gibraltar because that opens the door for her origin to be anything. I teased this earlier, but I have this headcanon that Fika is actually an alien shape-shifting and posing as a cat. I know it sounds crazy, but it might just make sense. To begin with, how many sci-fi franchises can you name other than Overwatch where wholly alien life is nowhere to be seen? Not as in Martian humans or lunar hamsters, but like an actual species from a different world. Then there's the fact that the only interaction where Fika initiates is one with Juno, where she questions if Fika is speaking to her, and she is very clearly affirms. Even though this adorable interaction is clearly played for laughs, if we think about it, it could legitimately mean that an alien Fika was testing to see if she could communicate with this other extraterrestrial. Then there's the fact that if this is indeed a shape-shifting alien, it was very clever to disguise as a cat. Not only are cats so generally loved and a non-target within the Overwatch world, but if she was trying to get a human to give her resources and equipment to help in whatever endeavor she came to Earth for, well, she clearly succeeded at getting such good machinery from Brigitte. Now, do I genuinely believe this theory? Only like 60%. I mean, calling any of these things evidence is generous. But honestly, it would be such a crazy and fun reveal that would open the door for them to do even more things with the lore and story of the game. And hey, if nothing else, a Gleep Glorp alien cat skin for Jetpack Cat would be pretty cool. And with that, this deep dive into Jetpack Cat has come to a close. So, what do you think about her? Do you love her? Do you hate her? Do you think she's an alien? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're at it, let me know if there are any other Overwatch heroes that you'd like me to do a deep dive into next. Thank you so much for watching. I am Linux, and I hope you have a great day.